I've been thinking about this character spotlight video for a while now. I've had a few years to think about it, in fact, and despite this video taking much longer to surface than anyone probably would have expected, I think the time away has actually helped this character's YouTube debut a colossal amount in the long run. Because despite the fact that I've had Kai as an original character just as long as some real-life teenagers have been around now, there would have been a lot of major character growth and story beats and new characters that would not have been present if I had made and published his video 3 years ago. I would have had less to talk about, and I would have ended up wishing I let him bake in the oven just a little bit longer so I could talk about him in a way that was more satisfying to me. So, here we are, 3 years later, and though it's a little late, happy birthday, Kai. Closing out Pisces season. This is your video. At long last. Kai Amon, or just Kai, has taken up residency in my brain for the entirety of my adolescence. A handful of others have been as well, and they're all special in their own way. But there's something about him in particular that holds an enormous amount of sentiment, even up against characters like Samos and Cassian, who I've arguably created a bit more content for. He's a character that's been woven through the emotional hardship of my teen years, through a love of the sea and finding strength in creativity and femininity and vulnerability. He's the kind of comfort character that comes to mind whenever I go to the beach, or when I find one of those hidden shallow caves behind a waterfall in some video game, or even after I've had a good cry after a particularly hard day of work. I've had Kai, or the origins of what would become Kai, for roughly 12 or 13 years now. I feel like whenever I'm asked how long I've had my oldest characters, the answer always changes because I've never been 100% sure, as I never dated my art back then. I never saw a reason to. I got my first online account on a social platform, DeviantArt, when I turned 13, and then from there the internet kept track of all that stuff for me. But I've been drawing traditionally fairly regularly before then, and the only indication of the year was based in what kinds of half-finished schoolwork and poorly graded math quizzes that were shoved in between the pages of my sketchbooks, and sometimes even those weren't properly dated. What I can say for certain is that Kai was my first male original character, and this was most likely the first time I ever drew him here. Back then his name was Jacob. Just Jacob. I don't know why I named him Jacob, but like a lot of the creative decisions back then, it really didn't have a purpose, it just was. Jacob's role was very minimal. He was just the boy character, and there wasn't much else to him. Despite his origins being more or less of a blank slate, there are still some slight design and personality details that are still slightly recognizable. The long black hair, the shrewd or cautious expressions, the height difference between him and the self-insert character that would eventually become Samos. When I entered middle school, I started soaking up anime, books, and video games like a sponge, and it showed in my work and my characters and myself as well. And as time went on longer, so did Kai's hair. Somewhere along the way, it just ended up flourishing from this little braid to this little ponytail to this longer braid until it was just these free-flowing bundles of Disney princess hair. Blue seemed like the natural go-to for his character's signature colors, as Samos had a lot of fiery elements in her previous designs. Phoenix Fire and Mermaid Blue ended up being the natural sort of aesthetic angle for these two, and it's a basis that would be built upon for both characters for years to come. As the element of water slowly seeped more into Kai's personality and design, it softened his character quite a bit. Gone was the default cool anime boy personality with his brazen snarkiness and his no-reason aloof gaze, and in his place blossomed someone a little more intuitive, a little more subtle in his pettiness, someone with his own interests outside of playing the straight man sidekick to his partner's more eccentric personality, someone I could relate to and feel attached to. The ocean imagery certainly helped. For those unaware, the Spiral Universe is the name of a specific character universe comprised of many characters. There is a fabled, supposed mainline story going on here, as vague and spotty as it is, even after all these years. It's fairly simple and to the point. A group of special magical people on a quest to gather artifacts, reconnect multi-dimensional gateways, reawaken the world's gods and deities, in order to eventually trap and imprison an ancient, wretched parasite from devouring the world after breaking free from its original celestial containment. These special people are comprised of a phoenix, who really isn't a phoenix, celestial bodies rebirthed in mortal form, a fairy prince of death, a handsome man, and Kai. Kai is kind of the Samwise in this sort of fellowship here. He's the deuteragonist, unwaveringly devoted to his best friend, the main character, and does his very best to be of aid to her and the adventuring party, despite arguably being the most normal person when compared to the actual beings of ancient legend there. He's a 19-year-old scholar studying archaeology and is a fanatic for ancient texts, architecture, and technology. Kai never had a strong attachment to his biological family, as his parents passed away during the fallout of the Tear and was brought up by his grandparents until they, too, passed away after he turned 12. Soon after, he was reluctantly taken in by his uncle far overseas, the only family he had left, and who just happened to be the head archivist residing in the vast library nestled in the Temple of the Phoenix, where Kai would soon have his chance run-in with the Phoenix, Samos, the Harbinger of Light, the most revered divine entity worldwide, who, at this point in time, has taken up residence in the vessel of a scruffy, scrappy 9-year-old. Samos took an immediate liking to Kai, finally getting to meet someone close to her own age, despite their meeting being initially met with a frantic uproar and a lot of pearl clutching, since any outsider presence coming into contact with the Phoenix at this age was strictly prohibited. It was clear that there would be no parting of the two if the Phoenix themselves had anything to say about it. Fast forward 7 years of friendship, the two would encounter the Call. Along with his other companions, Kai swept up in this adventure seemingly only through his loyalty to Samos, though, as fate would have it, Kai would soon discover more truths and secrets about himself through this calling than he would have ever thought possible. Despite Kai being easily prone to stress and is a bit of an overthinker, he's an incredibly bright mind when he allows himself the space to focus. He's thoughtful, loyal, and is deep down an excitable person. While he's also very polite, patient, and one who handles his emotions maturely, he isn't a doormat and is quick to get annoyed. While he may act reserved and holds his tongue when it matters, his emotions always play out on his face and in his body language. Once someone really gets to know him, they'll find he's a lot more quick-witted in a battle of playful jabs than one might originally think. He's a quick learner and picks up complex instructions, lessons, languages, and puzzles fairly easily. Despite his own insecurities and being unsure of himself, he's actually quite confident when it comes to teaching and mentoring others. His hobbies include creative pursuits like drawing and writing, and while he spends most of his time behind a desk with stacks of books or scrolls in front of him, he's quite active and loves swimming whenever he can. The Spiral universe shares a specific universal sentiment about the ocean. If the sea calls to you, you answer, whatever that answer might be. In a world saturated with magic and higher realm beings, the natural forces of the earth are not to be ignored either, and the ocean plays a large part in the Spiral universe's main storyline. While Robin's ship, the Wishmaster's Will, is a flying ship, it was originally built for sea travel, and much of the quest takes part on the sea itself as well. Many of the other characters the group will encounter are also related to the ocean in some way. The ocean represents power and wisdom. It's mysterious and horrifying, as well as beautiful and healing. To Kai, the ocean is all of these things and more. He's terrified of the sea, and he loves the sea. And to love something that has the ability to stir up such anxiousness inside him is very special to him. Water in general has always been a source of calm for him. Baths, showers, waterfalls, and rain have always been very meditative for his anxious mind. Ever since he started living with his uncle, he had been landlocked with very infrequent travel to any oceanside locations. This adventure brings newfound life with Kai's relationship with the sea, and himself. Being away from everything he knows, on a harrowing quest where he can do nothing but observe while others fight battles he cannot, has uprooted long-standing limitations he's put on himself. It's all added a magnifying lens to every insecurity that's anchored him to the shore. There's also an itching at the back of his mind. reoccurring dreams from childhood that have once again entered his subconscious, a feeling, a memory of an enormous presence watching him the night he was once swept away in a rip current as a child, a voice in his head telling him to let go. Moments where his mind whisks him away to the surreal dreamlike visions of a creature far too big to exist near the shore, stars dotting its flesh, a symbol of an eye stamped in the back of his mind. It's through recalling these memories that it has a great source of magic, the Sea Master's grimoire, bestowed upon him by the 200-year-old sea witch Eldreda, or Grandma Audi, who was a former mentor to Robin. While the group visits her domain on a particularly dangerous mission, Kai is gently deemed a possible liability as someone who is little in the ways of self-defense, and he's left with Eldreda, assisting her with the last bit of house cleaning before she leaves for her ascension, her long-awaited death. Despite their short time together, Audi sees a lot of herself in Kai, and through his stories and a mere glimpse of his character, there's not a shred of doubt in her mind that he's been called by the sea. Anyone can feel a pull towards the ocean, or feel called to it, but there's a rare level of resonance and connection that can be bestowed upon an individual that surpasses the norm. Kai has always been a normal, ordinary person, but the way in which he responds to the sea has led him to connect with things not of a mortal plane. And this sort of connection can apply to almost everything. Old gods and entities beyond the imagining may exist on separate fields that human senses can't identify, but the veils between mortals and higher realm beings can be thinned to a sheer gossamer if given the right gateway. And Kai's gateway has always been his feelings, and the power that can be achieved through his intuitive and focused mind. It's because of this that Audi finds him to be the perfect master to this all-powerful book. The book wants to be needed. It wants to be commanded. And all Kai has to do is believe in himself enough to master it, tame it, and make it his own. And eventually he does. It doesn't come easy, and at first it comes at a price. There's a point in their journey where they meet with the divine goddess Swimera Dessa, queen of seafolk and daughter of Brine, the supreme god of the sea that now sleeps dormant in the deep across different realities. Dessa is stubborn, proud, and has very little regard for humanity, so much so that despite Robin waiting 7 long years for an audience with her to request Brine's tear, a narrative MacGuffin with a long story behind it, the goddess all but slams the door in her face, her mood especially foul that their meeting has interrupted her mourning of the now late Eldreda, who is the only human she really loved. That is until Kai steps forward and offers himself as collateral. Kai, the human nobody. Kai, the new master of the beloved Eldreda's book. The only real legacy she left behind, with the only physical piece of memorabilia she left behind. Her book. The idea of temporarily taking the book's new master under her own tutelage is too indulgent a prospect to ignore, and Dessa agrees upon the condition that he must train under her and her subordinates, as her pupil, for as long as the trade is in effect. With a brave face and heavy heart, Kai lets go of Samos' hand, and leaves the team behind. Leaves Samos behind. A necessary sacrifice in a situation where time is not on their side, and where his own importance versus the direness of their mission is clear. He knows in his heart he's done the right thing, and all he can do now is just keep swimming. Into a grueling 2 months of training under the watchful eye of a goddess who ends up developing a bigger soft spot for him than she'd like to admit, phasing back and forth in between different realities, pushing the very fibers of his being to their limit. What Kai lacks in experience with magic, fighting, and stamina, he makes up for in willpower and hope. He's slow, but where he's at, time doesn't seem to matter, and so he loses himself in it. Seems to make himself new. The voices in his mind that guide him are clearer now. He discovers that they're not completely his own, but that they still belong to him. They're the clearest when the separation between himself and the water is minimal, and it's through that leading thread that Kai is able to completely dissolve himself into the sea and become it, just like the merfolk that dip and dive through different layers of reality in this world. Just like Brine, whose eon-old consciousness floats in every grain of sand, in every speck of marine snow that floats in every vast direction. It's through this training period that Kai gets a lot of time to be with himself, ancient inner ocean voices aside. There's nothing he can really do to move the overall quest forward from where he is, so all he can do is work hard like he knows his friends are. He undergoes a lot even the most disciplined human can rarely get to go through when it comes to mastering an element and fusing with it. And there's a lot of self-discovery that's born through all this single-minded work. He misses his friends, but knowing he'll only get to see them again if they succeed has him digging his heels in the sand and insisting that that outcome is the only true outcome. It's this determination born from hope that leaves no room for any doubt in the mission or himself. He thinks of Samos' sureness of herself. Robin's discipline, Amelia's adaptiveness, Cassian's cunningness, and Matthew's leadership, and holds them all to his heart, ready to follow their example. All of them his strength to move forward. All of them the blueprint in his rebirth. The merfolk take an instant liking to Kai, giving him companionship while his loved ones are far away. They tug him out of study sessions to adorn him in treasure, poke at his strange legs, and play with his hair. This is where his most current design comes into play. I really enjoy the idea of him being suited up by a bunch of mermaids. Kai's always been fascinated and inspired by merpeople, and to be doted on by them would be a very special experience for him. Though he's now being dressed in flashier colors and in more gold and jewels than he would ever have picked out for himself normally, to be able to wear something like this and feel powerful in it, to feel like one of them, is something that's very meaningful to him, especially after years and years of being a character who has had a lot of issues with his confidence and self-worth with no clear, satisfying resolution to those things. And while those issues still may crop up to haunt him in this now experience, he's far more equipped to face those fears. This is a Kai who no longer hides himself by a security blanket of hair. This guy stands tall and doesn't try to make himself look small. He marches forward, now sure of himself, his role, and where he belongs. And when Meridessa lets him leave early to go rejoin his companions for the rest of their adventure, he's never felt more at home in his spirit. I'd like to take a moment to shift now to specific relationships Kai has with other original characters of note in this main cast. Samos is by far the most noteworthy one, despite her reckless and carefree nature often sending Kai into a tizzy for worry of her safety. Kai greatly admires and envies his best friend, Samos. His affection for her shows through acts of frequent mother-henning and worrying over nothing, but at this point in the 7 years that they've known each other, their back-and-forth ribbing of each other has become playful banter. Kai often wishes he can view the world through Samos's eyes. He finds it an absolute honor to know her, and that's not because she's a light god incarnate. Through their journey away from everything they know, they end up clinging to each other a little for security, the unknown of the world softened by each other's comforting and familiar presence. Only now they'll be put into situations where they'll be forced to part in ways that they never have before. Letting go of each other's hand is difficult, but they reunite stronger than ever. Mathias and Cassian. Before their quest, Kai knew Mathias and Cassian through their volunteered work of giving demonstrations of basically their bond at work. Whether it be through combat styles or psychic tests, these demonstrations were given for researchers and scholars studying energy and how two souls can resonate at the same level despite their energies being so vastly different. Kai admired them originally like anyone would watching a celebrity do what they do best. It's through opting in to sit on a few of these demonstrations that inspired Kai to learn the basics of hand-to-hand combat and using one's energy for combat purposes, even if it was just like a light hobby for a while. While Mathias and Cassian don't have a lengthy amount of time to interact with Kai specifically in the narrative, they're both still good sources of inspiration and advice. Robin and Amelia. Robin has always left Kai a little starstruck the moment she met Samos and Kai. She cuts a towering, elegant figure and moves with purpose, takes no nonsense. While her curtness makes her a little intimidating, Kai can't help but want to follow her around like a duckling waddling after its mother. When she gives advice and direction, he takes it, and she in turn appreciates him for his drive to be a contributing member of the quest despite his initial inclusion being a little unexpected. As for Amelia, there's something about her scarily accurate emotional intuitiveness that Kai finds easy to be around, vulnerable with even. He can tell she too hurts deep down and forges a wonderful familial relationship with her. She's flashy, devil-may-care, and exudes a charm like no one he's ever seen. The envy he has of her confidence is not unlike the yearning he has for Samos's. It's through the length of this story that Kai discovers the cracks in the masks the two of them wear. The existential pain, anxiety, and fear that wounds the both of them deep down are not all that far different from what he feels. They've just had a lot longer to practice hiding it. Leo is an interesting one. A fairly newer character by comparison who existed to flesh out a bit of Robin's backstory and give her something of an annoying younger adoptive brother, though she ends up getting another one of those anyway. Leo is half fae, which is somewhat of a rarity in the last 100 years in this world. He's an adventurer, a charmer, and a bit of a twerp. Despite his fast-talking, crafty antics, though, he's got a heart of gold and is a big, sentimental baby. The more I develop this guy, the more I realized how good of a foil he'd be for Kai. They're complementary opposites in design and personality, but have similar interests. And it would only be natural for one of the last remaining family members Aldreda had left to automatically have some sort of tension with the stranger she bestowed her most important possession on before her death. They'd make good rivals, Leo's pig-headed stubbornness and competitive nature being a good motivator and natural sort of friction with Kai's not-so-competitive nature. And at the same time, Leo's still good enough a judge of character to see Kai's worthiness of the book before Kai does, despite Leo's insistence that the book should belong to himself instead. Ultimately, there will come a time where Leo will become a major cheerleader in Kai's Sea Witch journey, and will fully embrace Kai's mastery over the book. Then, of course, there's Aldreda and Wamiradessa, who were major factors in moving Kai's journey forward. Even Brine, who is both meant to be this colossal alien presence that is supposedly meant to be a god of the sea itself, everything that lives in the sea, and everyone who's ever been called to it, including Kai. Brine never appears in the flesh, but the iconography of the tentacles and eyes and pearls as eyes is everywhere. Brine may be asleep and will continue to sleep for eons more, but it has eyes open, ears listening, and a voice speaking, beckoning, all the time. And Kai listened. Kai answered. He let go and stopped struggling against the current. He let it sweep him out to sea. He kept his head above water, and eventually he found his own way home. Kai was a character that got me through a lot of heartache as a teenager. He reminded me of the ocean, he had the prettiest long hair that I could draw for hours, and he was an escape to someone who also didn't like himself very much. Someone who often felt lonely despite being surrounded by those who loved him. It's only within the past few years that I've let him stand on his own and have him be able to move forward and embrace and master the things that he feared, or didn't deem himself worthy of. For once, Kai was able to have his own arc and his own installment in a story that he was only meant to really be a supporting role for. And I get to draw him in a pretty new outfit too. Everyone's a winner. Yay! In conclusion, I really like this long blue guy. He's one of my favorite guys. I like his hair. He makes me cry sometimes. And his birthday just passed, and I'm taking him to Outback Steakhouse. So if you guys could wish him a happy birthday, if you see him there, I'd bet he'd really appreciate it. Wow, okay, I think I'm done. Is that everything? Nope, perfect. I'm going to call this video here. I've gabbed on long enough. There's a lot more details I could talk about, but this is already a little too long. If you want to know more particular facets to Kai's, like little more details to Kai's character, I'll leave a link below down to a character bio of some sort. It might change over the next few years, who knows, but it'll be something. I'll probably wait a little bit longer to do another lore video because I really want to do some more art-related stuff. But thanks to everyone who was willing to listen to this, and everyone who is waiting for it. The next character I will probably do will be Robin because she's usually number 3 in this big OC timeline, but narratively Cassian shows up before she does, so I don't know, we'll see how I end up doing it. I'm gonna go pass out now to the sound of the ocean waves in honor of this very good birthday boy here. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your month, and I'll see y'all very soon. Take care.